As the art capital of the 19th century, Paris is known as the birthplace of famous artists like Claude Monet and movements like Impressionism, Fauvism, and Cubism. Impressionism was one of the most influential movements to not only the 19th century Parisian art scene, but also to artists globally. Impressionism inspired many later movements, including Post-Impressionism, Fauvism, and Cubism, and its techniques continue to live on even in contemporary artworks. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the movement, some Impressionist techniques include, but are not limited to, plein air painting. This is the practice of painting outdoor landscapes. This technique is usually associated with the Impressionists' desire to paint the impermanent and fleeting qualities of light. The creation of paint tubes and box easels made art materials more portable for French Impressionists of the time to do this. Spontaneous painting process, natural landscapes and/or scenes of Parisian life, loose, visible, and unblended brushstrokes, and a vibrant color palette. Each French Impressionist has his unique painting style and they continuously evolve. Thus, I cannot strictly define characteristics that make an artwork Impressionist. Monet's Impression Sunrise was the first painting I replicated in my high school art class and the first painting to spark my interest in Impressionism, its predecessors and successors in art history. In this video, I document my month-long immersive trip in Paris where I experienced the arts and architecture through the perspective of a contemporary Impressionist, a present-day artist who shares similar aesthetic qualities as French Impressionists. Of course, we know how important natural landscapes are to an Impressionist like Monet. So an important question arises 2 centuries later. How will the portrayal of such subject matter evolve in the light of increasing skyscrapers and urban structures in the backdrop? My goal was to find out how such urban elements can find their place in contemporary Impressionist paintings of our time, yet retain some semblance of the Impressionist style. Would this even be possible? And if so, what level of detail would artists allocate to these urban structures? Would they be blurred into the background, serving as a secondary element? Or depicted as focal subjects? The answers to these questions are really up to you to decide, but I hope my reflections will shed more light on these themes. Within my first week in Paris, I came to 2 conclusions. 1. Parisian life is no longer bourgeois social events like the ballet scenes of Degas' The Dance Class or grand picnics of Manet's Le Déjeuner Célèbre. Rather, they have evolved into metropolitan cityscapes, urban commuters rushing to work, and lots of tourists. Now, this I already knew, so I wasn't surprised. However, the second conclusion I arrived at was that nature, light, shadow, and color were never completely obscured by said urban elements. I found spots all over the city, such as gardens and along the River Seine, with the potential to become great subject matter for a contemporary Impressionist. Painting these places away from the tourists, away from noisy cars, buses, and trains, and under the glow of a fleeting sunset, made me feel like an Impressionist of the 19th century. When I sat by the river and painted this building, I had no idea then that it was the Louvre. I only realized this when I showed my painting to a friend. I like to think it a nice romantic coincidence that, of all the buildings, I chose to paint this one. Of course, some of you may be unimpressed by this little anecdote, but I chose to take this as a lesson to paint spontaneously as the Impressionists have, not just in brushwork, but also in my choice of subject matter and composition. As I painted the detail of the building's exterior, I became acutely aware of the golden of the external surfaces and how the roof shined silver blue instead of a dull grey. In Impressionist terms, this would be called relative color. To elaborate, local color is the color an object appears in under neutral white light. In this case, walls of the Louvre could be described as a pale off-white shade, the roof a grey-blue, and the bridge a grey-white. I saw differently because I saw how these structures interacted with the glow of sunset. So, I painted the structures like how I saw them, and not using the local colors. That's when it came to me that this is how urban elements find their place in contemporary Impressionist works, manipulated by light and manipulating shadow. Shapes made by the metal railings along the library that I passed during my evening jogs present a compelling subject matter that satisfies the Impressionist desire to capture the nuances of light and shadow. Of course, capturing contemporary Parisian life includes tourists now, considering its reputation as one of the most visited cities in the world. Naturally, I did touristy things too, like visiting the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, and the list goes on and on. I visited Musée l'Orangerie and Musée d'Orsay many times over the course of the month too, at first for research on this project of mine, and subsequently just to paint and sketch the sculptures there. On my second visit to Musée d'Orsay, I chanced upon Monet's La Gare Saint-Lazare. Honestly, the first time I saw the work was not in the galleries, but on a postcard in the souvenir shop. On the same visit, I also walked through an exhibition area titled Après Manet, where I found myself enamored by Paul Gauguin's copy of Manet's Olympia. So I decided the moment the postcard caught my eye that I would create my own Après Monet, where I would recreate this painting by Claude Monet. Just like my accidental painting of the Louvre, I let my artistic choices be guided once more by spontaneity and fate. It was said that Monet was heavily inspired by themes of modernization and industrialization when he painted the station. He made a dozen paintings of this series to capture the station and trains at different times of the day. I imagine the people of the time must have been in awe of the train and the rapid advancements in technology it represented. I cannot fathom how they would react to the further progress we have achieved since then. Monet's series perfectly captures the themes I had intended to explore in my own project, as my curiosity toward urbanization parallels his inquisitiveness toward modernization. In painting the same station almost 1.5 centuries later, I wanted to honor Monet just as Gauguin did with Manet. My first thought when I arrived at the station was, wow, I'm standing where Monet stood 150 years ago. Okay, Constance, what did we just realize?
We just realized where Monet was standing when he painted his painting.
Yes. My second thought was, so much has changed and so much still looks the same. I made my first observational sketch of the station from an objective perspective, capturing as much detail and subject matter as I could. This is so that alongside the video footage I also collected, I could compare my painting to Monet's and see how the structures have changed. It's crazy to imagine that the architecture has barely changed, the silhouettes formed by the roof, the metal rods spanning the ceiling look almost identical. The trains, however, have undergone remarkable evolution, no longer emitting smoke and steam, which were once the quintessential symbols depicted in paintings of the Industrial Revolution. Monet made preliminary sketches en plein air and finished his works in a studio. Likewise, I made sketches on site but made my painting at home. The interplay between nature and urban structures, which manifests in unique shadows and colors, is how we can reconcile the urban transformation of Paris with Impressionist ideals. Paris persists as a muse for contemporary artists who wish to paint in an Impressionist manner. Does Impressionism remain confined to its time, or does it thrive in the contemporary art world? Personally, I believe in the latter. As I stroll along the banks of the River Seine, witnessing the skilled painters capturing scenes of the city, it becomes evident that the spirit of Impressionism continues to resonate vibrantly within the Parisian art scene.